Hello, my name is Sheila and I would like to welcome you to my podcast All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email, allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. I'd like to welcome you to another conversation on the All About You podcast. My guest today is David Harvey, who lives in Portsmouth in the UK. David is a long-distance runner. So, David, welcome to the podcast and thank you for being a guest.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, David, how did your running journey begin?
So that's interesting question, actually, because in my 20s I was quite overweight. I partied a lot. I used to drink a lot, and I think over a number of years after leaving school, when I was nice and fit, used to play a lot of cricket. It's sort of been this fit young person, and then left boarding school, went to college, and started smoking weed, started drinking too much, and just generally being a bit of a rebel. Was really into music, played in a band and did a lot of touring, and got to this point, I think, when I was around the age of 27. When about the age of 27, I noticed myself being quite overweight, had some man boobs, and the gym never really appealed to me. And I thought, I used to see people in gyms and stuff standing there flexing their muscles in the mirror, that kind of thing, and I thought, oh, what a bunch of posers. So decided to go to a place down Fratton Road called United Footwear, and I just bought a pair of running trainers. Sort of dragged my fat body out of the house and went and ran a mile, and I found that I was able to run a mile non-stop pretty much. I was probably about 4 or 5 stone heavier than I am now, so was, I don't know, 16, 17 stone, that kind of thing. Really unhealthy, could hardly breathe. And so did this mile in Portsmouth, and it made me feel amazing. And it was the first time for years that I'd actually sort of, I guess, broken out of the sweat, that when I didn't have a guitar around my neck, really. I was pretty much addicted from then. And so I went from running just 1 mile to sort of like building it up a little bit kind of carefully. And then I just remember myself really quickly getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning to go and, run just 3 or 4 miles before work. Suddenly all this weight just dropped off me, and I went, it was like someone has pricked me with a pin. And I went from fat guy to skinny, lanky guy really quickly, and it just made me feel a lot better. It increased, my mood got much better, increased my confidence. I felt much better about myself, and better about the way I looked. I started needing to buy different clothes, and and this pair of running trainers that I bought, they probably lasted me a year or two, and I didn't think about getting into it in any serious way, if I'm honest. And it's just sort of like, just kind of happened. And I think that I'm a guy that, whether I work or play, I'm a guy that goes full in 100%. So if I start something and I like it, then you'll find that I'll take it to an extreme. So if I'm gonna drink, I'm gonna get really drunk. If I'm gonna go for a run, then I'm gonna go and run 100 miles in one go, that kind of thing. So my natural kind of personality took over very quickly, and just went full in on the running. My friend Lee, who was a fellow fatty, he started running as well, and remember him saying that he ran 5 miles a day, and I was like, what? People can do that? People can run 5 miles a day? And we hooked up for a run, and then really quickly, whilst we were running, I think we were running just like 13 miles, so about half marathon, we decided to go and run 100 miles. And so we went and did that. And so I think it was only 6 months later that we found ourselves standing in Kent about to run 108 miles along the Green Sand Way. So it really did just go from nothing to, you know, an incredible kind of distance really quickly. So I was completely hooked, and we ran that 108 miles over 4 days just off our own backs with no idea what we were doing. I had no idea what I was doing. I was wearing cotton socks. I was wearing a pair of road shoes. It was muddy. Had completely inappropriate clothes on. Had the biggest bag, heaviest bag. Nothing to carry any water in. But hey, bugger it. We were having a great time. So we just decided to go for a run and ran to Hazelmere from Kent.
It's absolutely incredible. I mean, you started off saying, and you've been incredibly honest here, David, as in your lifestyle and how you were living at that time.
Yeah.
You decided, okay, I'm just going to go out and run 1 mile, which for a lot of people will just make them shut the front door and lie on the sofa to start with. You just went and got a pair of shoes, didn't particularly look at any technical thing, just nearest pair of trainers, okay, run a mile. I mean, that's just incredible. And the fact that you then felt so much better so quickly, that obviously gave you the motivation to continue. And as you say, less than 6 months from that first point, you are standing there looking at this very long race, prepared, and you were putting yourself forward to do this.
Yeah. So that was just something that we did to raise money, that we did off our own backs, because it was a bunch of friends that, you know, we just thought, oh, let's go and do that. It's something to do, because what else is there to do? But I remember going to my first ever ultra distance race. So I went and did this thing called the Norman Conquest 50 miler. I turned up at the start line of that, and there were all these guys that were dressed that I used to like to call Salomon Man. So Salomons are brands that people sort of dress up in. It makes them look slick and cool and like they're really good at running. And there was me turned up in like a t-shirt that probably said Metallica, a pair of shorts, and a bag that was leaking water everywhere, and I looked like an absolute fraud. But I finished it. You know, I managed to do it. I had like chorizo in my or chorizo. What's the
chorizo sausage? Yeah.
Yeah. And was completely not prepared for any of this, but just went and did it anyway because it seemed like a good thing to do. And particularly with these ridiculously long distance runs that I like now, I guess, you know, I've done 145 miles in one go now. Like with these long runs, you sort of have to be quite well prepared. So I'd always turn up at the start when I started running with these races and just not be very well prepared at all, but would just go for it and love it, because that's what it's about.
So your sort of motivation overtook the actual planning in making sure you had the correct gear so that you didn't have any injuries or blisters. You weren't prepared with the water, the correct clothing. Just let's just go and do it and bugger the consequences.
I've got a philosophy of JFDI, which is just fucking do it. If there's so if someone challenges me to something, then I find it very difficult to say no. And if there's something that I'm in an iron about, then my JFDI comes over in my head and I'm like, oh, just bloody go and do it, for God's sake. Stop thinking about it and worrying about it, because that just stresses you out.
So are you quite a driven person then? You say you generally go for everything 100%, which is a phenomenal personality trait to have anyway. But the fact that you are doing these incredibly long races, I mean, I'm thinking here about a marathon, which is sort of 26 miles. You are doing 5 times that, and you are ill prepared. I mean,
so nowadays I'm much better prepared than I used to be.
That's through necessity, from injury, pain, blisters, and bloody feet, I should imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it was 2014, I did my first 100-mile race, and that was Thames Path 100. So from Richmond to Oxford, stood on the start line there as a massive imposter, not deserving to be there by any right, really. But 25 hours later, I managed to end up in Oxford, having finished the race almost in tears at the finish line. And you just follow the Thames Path. You've got a 28 or 30 hour time limit, and every sort of 5 or 10 miles you get aid station where you can top up some water and grab a little bit of food, grab an energy gel.
So are you actually running for 24 hours, or you do it in sort of blocks?
So you do it in one go. So,
oh, you do it in one go. So you're running through the night?
Yeah. So, and it's all quite well marked, but that's the challenge. There's no point in doing these things unless they're going to be a real challenge. So for me, the worst thing that you can put in front of me is to do something like a 5K, where I have to go all out really, really fast and end up at the finish line, almost keeling over, out of breath. The ultra distance races like the 100 milers are right up my street, because you can stop, have a little bit of a snack, you can talk to people.
More the tortoise than the hare.
And they're really good. So yeah, the Thames Path 100, I think I managed to finish that in 25 hours. And by the time I got to the finish line, I was in pretty bad way. My mum came to pick me up and pretty much had to walk me to the car, and with Peter on one arm and her on the other, massive blisters on my shoes. I was pretty ill prepared, but that's how you learn from it. You learn from your mistakes, don't you? Spent perhaps a week trying to get over that. I remember when I got home after that one, actually, I was completely knackered, but was insistent on going to the pub. And it took me something like half an hour to walk the 5-minute walk to the festing. And I had like 2 sips of beer and then almost killed over, and then had to sort of have a little bit of a time out, standing with my head up against the wall, about to throw up and pass out. It's, I went from, when I did my first 100-mile race, I got incredibly addicted to it. So I just started doing a lot of them. So I did the Thames Path something like 3 or 4 years in a row. There's a company called Centurion who do some really amazing races in the UK, and they put on one called the Autumn 100, which is around Streatley and the Thames and the Ridgeway, up near Reading, that kind of area. So I did that a few years in a row, and did the North Downs Way 100, which was Farnham to almost to Canterbury along the North Downs, which is incredibly hard because it's in August as well, and it's normally quite hot, or there's some kind of weather to challenge you. And ran the South Downs Way 100 as well. There's a bit of a story about one race that truly inspires me, is one called the Western States 100, which is over in California, and it's probably the world's most famous 100-mile race. And I'd always dreamed of doing it. And one of my friends who I run with a lot, he said, why don't you put your name down for it? And you've got less than a 1% chance of doing it, because they take people all over the world. So the first time you apply, you have your name in the hat once, and there'll be something like 50,000 tickets in it for, up to 10,000 people, because every time you don't get in, you get an extra ticket in the hat, and then that doubles. So second year you get 2, and then third year 4, and then 8, and so on. So the first time I applied, I managed to get in.
Oh my God, the first time.
Yeah, so I think it's 300 people out of about 10,000 people that apply, with a ridiculous amount of tickets in the hat. And I'd had a particularly kind of heavy weekend that weekend, and I'd been partying with my friends and quite drunk, and just getting up to the usual shenanigans, and woke up on Monday morning to find that £350 had been taken out of my account. But with this email to inviting me to go over to California to run with some of the best ultra runners in the world. So, and it was a bit of a dream come true. So immediately phoned up my mum in a blind panic, saying asking her how on earth am I going to be able to get over to California? Will she help me? So she thought it was quite exciting opportunity, to be honest. And I think I got a phone call back that afternoon from her saying, well, I've spoken to Peter about it. Should we go to Vegas as well for a week? And I was
my God! So they planned to come with you.
Yeah, so it was a bit of a kind of crazy day but we planned on doing this race and going over to California, and so I did it, and it's an amazing race, the Western States 100. You go through mountains and canyons in heat that's over 100 degrees, and I can honestly say it's the hottest that I've ever been in my life, and you're racing against the best people in the world, and there's little old me who's, quite frankly, drunk too much and smoked too much in his life.
Did you really train before this race, though?
Yeah, I trained for this one as best as I could, and so there's a lot of training to get to the start line of that kind of thing. So you have to put in 70, 80, 90 mile weeks with back-to-back marathons at the weekend, that kind of thing, just to get your body in a decent shape for it. But the hardest part of it was because the weather, you go from a ski resort, so it starts in snow, and then when you climb up the mountains and get to the canyons, it's, it could be 40 degrees C, which is really, really brutal if you live on sea level in Portsmouth in England.
And everything is relatively flat.
Yeah, for a month beforehand, I spent 30 minutes to an hour sitting in a sauna, just getting my body used to being hot. And I'd go and run in the sunshine here, wearing a puffer jacket or a raincoat, so that I could really sweat and really get my body used to basically being more efficient in the heat. But it's like the whole point of going to do something like that, and a lot of the races that I do now, because I've given up on doing 100-mile races willy-nilly, just doing it for the sake of it, because I've sort of done that. I've done my getting into it and getting excited by it thing. So now I'll only do something that truly inspires me or forces me to grow into a person that is able to complete it. So that would be something that I don't think I'll be able to do, and something that I feel like is a real challenge for me, and most likely that I won't be able to finish. But that's the kind of thing that appeals to me now. So the last couple of years, I've been concentrating on doing that kind of thing.
So you're more strategic now on what you do, and you're more into the planning and getting your body and your mindset in the right place to do these races.
Yeah, that's right. So I ran up a load of volcanoes in La Palma, which was quite interesting. That was sort of like ankle deep volcanic sand, ridiculously hot as well. And then ran one that I didn't know that I'd be able to do, which is quite flat but quite long, was the Grand Union Canal race, which is quite a classic UK ultra, which is probably one of the most famous UK ultras, which you only get about 100 people starting it. But that's 145 miles, Birmingham to London. Having never done more than about 100 miles, I didn't really know whether that was going to be possible for me. And there's that mental element to it of when you normally finish, you're still faced with another 45, 50 miles to go. And what does that feel like, and how do you push through that barrier was quite appealing to me. And what you notice with these kind of things is when you start on the start line of a 50-mile race, you complete the 50-mile race and you think, well, in a month I've got to go and run 100 miles. But when you finish the 50-mile, you could never think of doing it twice. Like, you think, no, there's no way that I'll be able to finish a 100-mile race. So in order to do any of these things, you have to start the race in the right mindset, so that you know that you're going to be out there for 24, 36, 48 hours without being able to sleep, or without being able to stop and sit down, and not having a proper meal, and being dehydrated, and 20 miles away from the nearest stop, that kind of thing. And that's like, it's that mindset that will get you through. You can really get your body, if you finished a 50-mile race, you'll be able to do 100, no problem. But you have to get your brain in gear, because it's the mental approach to things that's going to be most important. Because your body will get you so far, but you really have to get yourself in the right headspace to be able to break through that barrier and to keep yourself going. When you're 80 miles into a race or 75 miles into a race and you've still got to run another marathon, but your legs hurt, and you're knackered and you just want to sit down and your stomach's going, you've been throwing up for the last few hours. There's something that happens there, gives you, you either get to the end and you're determined, or you don't finish. What's the most important thing? So you've got to have that desire to be able to finish these things.
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's the physical preparation for your body and making sure you've done the training and making sure you've got the right kit, etc. But it's the mental capacity. It's the biggest thing. I mean, all these top athletes, they use visualization. They can sit in a chair, but they can use visualization on the crowd, the weather, the sound, how they're feeling. And that's what seems to make the difference.
Yeah.
And take these athletes and sports people to this top level.
Yeah, of course. And I think with that, there's a certain confidence in becoming really fit. If you feel physically fit and good at the start line, then that's also going to boost your confidence, isn't it? But there has to be desire there, because there's just no point in starting something if you're not really sure that you'd be able to finish it. You've got to want something, I think. So I think last couple of years ago I went and did one quite a famous race called UTMB, which is the Ultra Trail de Mont Blanc, and you follow a trail that goes around the Mont Blanc Massif, and you have up to 46.5 hours to do it, and it takes you over 10 mountain ranges, or 10 mountains that you have to peak, over 105 miles, and it's pretty hard in that that you're going to go really slow, so there's not a hell of a lot of running to do on it, and that at times you might be up at quite high altitude, and there are moments in that when you are from Portsmouth, everything is flat, and you stood there in the middle of nowhere effectively with another 1,000 meter mountain to climb. You think, what on earth am I doing here? But that's kind of part of the beauty of it, is taking yourself into these kind of places that you would never normally go, and having that kind of desire to get through it and to prove to yourself that you're able to actually do something like that.
So looking back from where you started, as you say, you did the partying lifestyle, and when you look at yourself now, you must two completely different people.
I think the guy that parties and the guy that runs are the same thing. It's just their addiction is different.
When you run, you do get that high from the endorphins when you run, and that's what a lot of people get addicted to. Yeah,
exactly. I think that when being a person that used to work in substance misuse, you would see people that would give up alcohol or give up heroin and then get addicted to something else, And I'm not saying that I was addicted to alcohol or heroin or anything like that. That's not really my bag. I think the approach to things are the same. As if you've got that kind of personality that's going to go and try something, then you sort of tend to get deep into it, and you either get burnt or you love it,
So you're an all or nothing type person.
Exactly.
So David, how did you get into the Portsmouth Running Podcast?
It's not my podcast. That's my friend Daniel Del Piccolo's podcast, who is a great runner, and he loves it. He lives for it. It's his real passion, and he, something that is, what's it called? He calls it a labour of love, and he'll do, one episode every couple of weeks and interview just local people from Portsmouth, because he thinks, he finds stories. Everyone's got their own story, don't they? Whether run a ridiculous amount of miles or whether you run a few miles, everyone has a story to tell, and it works on that premise, really. So we get together and we'll have a chat before he does the interviews, and we'll talk about what we're up to, what's been going on in Portsmouth. We might do things like talk about coffee that we've tried in Portsmouth or beers that we've tried in Portsmouth. Yeah, so it's a little bit about running, a little bit about just a couple of mates chatting, but it's his baby, really. I'm just there for the ride, I think, at the moment.
I mean, Portsmouth is very much on the map for running, because we have the Great South Run in theory every year, and then they have the Great North. How have you kept yourself motivated during the lockdowns? I mean, have you been able to go out running, or because I know in the UK you were allowed out for exercise once a day, whereas for us here in Spain, absolutely not.
Are you not? Gutted.
Well, we're not in lockdown now, but we were in complete lockdown for 12 weeks. which started sort of a year ago this week. We were allowed out once a week to go to the supermarket, one person per household, and you're allowed to go to the pharmacy. And that was it. So we were not allowed out for any exercise at all for the first couple of weeks. And then we were allowed out, but in particular age groups, within a certain distance from your residence, that type of thing. So we were in a very, very strict, we were quite happy here. We got a small balcony and we were out there doing the Joe Wicks workout every morning thing, because it's very easy when you're used to doing loads of walking and all of a sudden that's taken away from you and you're maybe having a biscuit with a cup of coffee, you might be having a glass of wine, whereas you wouldn't normally. It's very easy for the weight to go on. Hopefully, we haven't put weight on during the pandemic, but a lot of people have, because the boredom, the lifestyle, the stress, not being out and about. So how did you keep motivated?
Well, I normally make sure that I've got a race to aim for anyway. So I'd signed up to the Thames Path 100 again, because there was obviously no chance of being able to go abroad and do something interesting. Quite kind of interesting, actually. We spent a few months in Thailand and Cambodia, and then came back, and a week later it was a lockdown. So was in pretty good mental shape when the lockdown started, and I think that lasted until about October or something like that, and was like, hey, isn't life great, because the sun had kind of carried me through. But I think I signed up to the Thames Path 100, had a place on the South Downs 100, which both of those I volunteered at the year before. So I had a place there. There's something to do more than anything, just in case. But the Thames Path in May got postponed and was put in September. And then the South Downs 100 was postponed and put to November. So ended up not having anything to do, but was still kind of training for something. So was in this weird position where I was running a shitload of miles and not knowing whether it was for a purpose or for a reason, and whether races were going to go ahead. And then one drunken afternoon, I decided to sign up to something called the Coast to Coast, which was going from west coast to east coast of England, just on the, thinking that it would probably get cancelled, but it didn't. So I found myself training for this 140-mile race that was 3 weeks after the Thames Path 100, and both those races went on. So had a whole load of last summer just doing lots of miles to run these two races. But it was difficult. Lockdown hasn't been nice here. It's been much easier than you guys. So we've been allowed out for exercise. So if you go for a run, then you can just run around a 1 mile loop or something like that, or go up the roads. There's no real restriction to it, and that's kind of the beauty of running, I think, is that you don't need to have an exercise bike. You just need you don't need a gym. You can just have a pair of trainers, and whether you're running on a long bit of trail or running a 100-meter kind of like lap or anything like that, you're still just running, aren't you? So all of it is good to, if you're doing like a lap run, then it's good for your mental kind of strength to kind of endure the same and the boring. But yeah, it's been all right. Work's been the hardest for the lockdown, I think, because there's not been any choice to go and see people, and you find yourself quite isolated, I think, and so that's been quite difficult. But exercise wise, it's been absolutely fine.
Have you set yourself any running goals for this year?
Yeah, I have. So what am I doing this year? I'm currently training to try and get a personal best at marathon. So the Goodwood Marathon is happening on the 25th of April, and ideally I'd like to go under 3 hours on that. Don't think that's going to happen, because I had COVID a couple of months ago, and it really, I was quite fit before that, but it's just done something a little bit kind of sinister, and I had it very, very light. I wouldn't want to have it bad, but it still affected me a little bit, and I think it would probably take a few more months to get back to that kind of proper level of fitness. But mainly this year, we're going over to Chamonix, maybe, depending on what the coronavirus situation is. I'm going to run a race called the TDS that goes from Italy to France around the mountains there, and then hopefully in October going to run a 250-mile race going from North Wales to South Wales across. So
250 miles. Is this through a few days? Is this running through the night again?
Yeah, it's all in one go. So you've got a start time and a finish time, which is I think it's about 88, 89 hours. And it appeals to me because it's sort of hard to complete, and I don't know if I can do it.
Listening to what you've been talking about, you are just so good at pushing yourself.
Yeah.
I just cannot believe the story you started. You've been totally honest about your lifestyle and partying, and now you're talking about doing these incredible races, which you have done, which is absolutely amazing. Yet you are still pushing the envelope. You are still pushing yourself physically, mentally. You're trying to recover from COVID. So sorry to hear you've had to go through that, David, but you're hearing these stories of people, yes, I've got over it, but it has affected me in this way. And as you say, it's going to take longer, yet you are still pushing yourself.
Yeah, well, you've got to have a project, haven't you?
I am just in awe of the way that you're brutally honest on this is where I was and how I lived my life, being overweight and partying, etc. And now you're reeling off these incredible races and experiences. You're pushing yourself. You've gone through COVID, but you're push. Yes, I'm doing this. I've applied for that. That is, what a journey. What a journey.
I don't know if it's, I think you're right. It is pushing yourself, but I think it's quite relative to people, isn't it? So if someone's doing a 5K and just starting out, then the next step for them is to go and run a 10K, is to go in 3 miles to 6 miles to 10 miles. And it's that putting yourself out of the comfort zone and it is pushing yourself, you're right. But life kind of begins there for me, because comfort just breeds contempt and you get too familiar and life will pass you by. You know, comfort is the evil. It really is. And you sort of sit there and you don't get challenged by comfort, do you? You don't achieve anything through being comfortable. It's not until you take yourself out of that comfort zone and push yourself, and then you can make that comfortable, and then you can push it further. And who knows what you'll be able to accomplish? You could be, the sky's the limit. You could really. There are people that can do things that blow my mind. The mind boggles. These people in the army that are able to go and put themselves in situations and keep cool. To be in the middle of when the shit hits the fan. If you can keep calm in those situations, then I think you're doing pretty well. Put yourself in a crap situation. Stress yourself. Challenge yourself, and you'll be surprised what you can do. And anyone can do what I can do. They really can, but you have to go and put yourself out there, because otherwise you just won't achieve it. And I think that it is that taking yourself out of your current comfort and seeing, can I do this? And that really appeals to me. And the harder it is, the more chance of failure means that when you actually complete it, it will feel even better. I think they say, the tougher the battle, the sweeter the victory.
I mean, when you run now, I'm hoping you have the right technical clothing.
Yeah, just about. But I'm not a fan of buying stuff, pointless crap. So the running shorts that I have been stitched up 100 times because people buy too many things. So if you can repurpose things, cut the arms off a t-shirt to turn it into a vest when the t-shirt's not good anymore, I'm all for that. You can't. There's no excuse to not be able to go and do things, because you can repurpose anything that you've got. If you've not got a pair of shorts, then cut a pair of jeans in half, go for a run. Whilst I do have certain things like a hydration vest where you keep the water in, that's falling to pieces. I'm not one of these guys that's going to go out there and purposely buy the best t-shirts and the best shorts and the best socks, because that's not what it's about. Like the stuff that will keep you alive, then that's important. But everything else, you can just slodge it all together into some kind of workable thing.
I think we've all sort of seen people in various sports where it's sort of all the gear but no idea.
Yeah.
Gone out and bought all this incredible stuff, but then they haven't got a clue. And it's not just in running; you see it in every sport.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed, David, at how you are pushing yourself. I mean, I look back many, many years ago, I did the Great South. And I remember Pete had done it, I think, the first year we lived in Southsea. And the route is all around where we live. So literally the training ground was part of the route. And he said, why don't you have a go? I'm not a natural runner. I'm an exerciser, but I'm not a runner. And I remember we went out one Sunday morning, and just to run to the lamppost at the end of the street was like, I'm never going to do this. 2 years in a row, I completed it. And I remember on one of the runs, I saw this sign. It was like, 3 kilometres the end or something. And then there was this man in front of me, and he was dressed as a giant flip-flop. I got to the point, I thought, I really cannot do this anymore. And I spotted this guy, and I thought, Sheila, all you've got to do is just to overtake the giant flip-flop. All you've got to do is that one thing.
Yeah.
And this was a giant flip-flop. It was probably the size of a single bed, strapped to his back. It was quite a warm day. And I was just fixated on this giant flip-flop. Just get in front of him, Sheila. And then if you want to stop, you can, but you've got to overtake this giant flip-flop. And I did. I overtook him, and I carried on. And as you say, when I finished, that feeling, because I wasn't a runner, Pete had trained me. And I remember running along Southsea seafront, and I went out, lovely day. Halfway through the run, there was a hailstorm. It was absolutely horrendous. They were really hurting your skin. And I thought, no, Sheila, you're cold, you're wet, you're fed up, you're being rained on by hailstorms. Keep going. And when I came back, sort of jumped in the hot shower. And I remember Pete saying to me, well, you're a real runner now. He said, have you spat in the street yet? No, I haven't. I could never bring myself to do that. But I remembered, and I've got my medals. And when I look back, I thought, God, did I really do that? Did I really do that? But it's incredible, your story.
Sounds like a good lesson for life, is just get past the giant flip-flop.
Well, it was at the time, and I've never, ever forgotten the guy as the giant flip-flop, but on that one thing,
I think that when you do stuff like Great South Run, or what I do, or marathons, that we're never going to get any recognition for it, are we? Really? Because so it all becomes something that's about yourself and your internal kind of ambition and your struggle, and about doing it for yourself. And you don't ever want to let yourself down, do you? So, and that's the drive, and that's what you do it for, isn't it? Is that personal accomplishment? Because I'm not going to stand up on a podium, in the Olympic Stadium, with a medal or anything like that. So my purpose is completely different. So if I don't finish something, then I'm letting myself down, and I'm not letting anyone else down. So, when you go and do Great South Run or Park Run, if you don't finish it, then no one's going to care. But inside whether you're able to do it or not.
I think you can be your biggest cheerleader, and you can be your biggest critic. Two different sides of sort of the same person. Are you going to motivate yourself to do something, or are you going to stay in your comfort zone? Nobody can motivate you. They can give you all the ideas and the tools, but you're the one that has to say, okay, I'm going to give it a go, or I'm going to do it, or I'm going to try. Because we always think motivational speakers, they motivate you. They give you the tools, but at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to put the shoes on and go outside that front door. You're the one that's going to pick up that paintbrush or start writing that novel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've got the gremlins on your shoulder is the hardest person to kind of to ignore, really. Sometimes you've just got to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just fucking do it. JFDI, and just get out there and see if you can and put yourself in there. Because otherwise, you're just going to end up sitting there wondering and stressing yourself out, aren't you?
I mean, David, you are taking the running to a whole new level. What advice would you give to somebody who's going to listen to this and think, okay, well, running the ultras are not my thing, but maybe I might put myself down for a local 5K or something like that. What advice would you give them?
Well, if you've never done it before, then you won't know whether you can do it. So you might as well just go and sign up and find out. So just go and do it. Just put your shoes on and go and see what it's like, whether it's raining or not. But whether it's running or whether it's painting, then you've got to find out find something that you enjoy and that gives you purpose. However hard running is when you first go and do it, if you put the work in, then only over a month or two, it won't take long for you to get very comfortable doing the speeds and the distance, and then you can build it up, and it will become a friend to you. But you won't know that unless you don't go and try it first. So I would just count down from 5 and then put your trainers on and get out the door.
I think for me personally, when I started the running, something I wasn't prepared for and didn't expect at all was the mental clarity. Once you get running into your rhythm, and it might take you a while to get into that,
Yeah.
and then you forget about what you're doing, because basically all you are doing is left, right, repeat. You start to think. You then get clarity. You get ideas. You get solution to problems.
It's funny you should say that, because I guess what I've not spoken about is the therapeutic side to it, because it's such a part of my life now that it's inherently meditational for me. And I go out and I do a run, and it clears my mind. It makes me feel good. In my head, it makes my body look better. It gives me more confidence. It makes me happier. It's that mental side and the physical side is fantastic. But there's something else about it which you can't put your finger on sometimes, and that's the meditational aspect of it, where it just sort of takes that cloud away. And you might be running for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, hour, and then you realise you haven't really thought about anything, and then you get this kind of calmness and relaxation. If I'm at work and I can't solve a problem, or I don't know what to do, or I'm just getting a little bit worked up or a little bit stressed out about something, I think, no, stop it, go out and go for a run. And only about 10, 15 minutes into that run, I'll go, that's what I need to do. And it might be as simple as thing as not really knowing how to word an email, to going, just, they're not going to care, or this is how you word it. Or it might be that you've got to have a difficult conversation with someone. And then, within going out for a run, it will just make it easier for you. And it really, really works. So it's one of the kind of, everyone talks about that kind of like physical side to it and the mental health side to it, but then there's that extra benefit to it as well, which is that maybe it's a sense of assertiveness, or like you say, clarity about being able to get things done or do stuff or approach things in certain ways. And I think that's part of that kind of meditational aspect to it, where it just kind of like takes that cloud away from your mind.
Yeah, I think for me that is one of the aspects of running. To me, that was the biggest surprise. How it's cleared my mind. You get solutions to problems. As you say, once you get into your rhythm and, you start to think, oh, it's cold, I really don't want to do this, and, my legs ache, this type of thing. So that just seems to disappear, because you're almost on this zone. I mean, I think they call it sort of, you're in some kind of zone. And then the brain just starts to sort of slow everything down, and you maybe start looking around at the scenery, and then you start sort of thinking, and it's incredible how it goes. Yeah,
it really is. It really is. I'm really glad you said that, actually, because all the other stuff is just, that's just accomplishments are secondary to actually what it's all about. And that's what you're saying is, the benefit to your health, to your physical, mental health is astonishing. And it's got all of these extra layers to it, like you're saying, about that kind of clarity. And that's a really, really, really good reason to go and do it. And being a mental health nurse, I've worked in hospitals and substance misuse services where, I'll be honest, in mental health service, exercise is pretty much forgotten. But it would be really, really good to see something like running as being prescribed for people, or something just to get people a little bit more motivated into getting out there. And people don't have to run fast; they don't have to run far. Small steps, baby steps, and then people would really start to get the benefit of it. And I'd really love to see that in the mental health services, because it is something that, when I started running, I was qualified as a mental health nurse, I didn't really get it, and I didn't really see how profound the effect would be for me. And I think that, in all honesty, I know a lot of people that have been particularly mentally unwell. If they were running at the time that happened, they probably wouldn't have needed medication. they probably wouldn't have relapsed so badly or been so unwell. So yeah, it's definitely got kind of, there's lots to it, isn't there? And it's only left foot, right foot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with you. I mean, again, as I was saying earlier, you are looking at the extreme end of it. But for a lot of people, if they just, you've got a problem. I mean, I know the situation is different. A lot of people are still in confinement and staying at home because of the COVID. Even just getting out and going for a walk.
Yeah.
Again, left, right, nice and slow, whether it's around your local park, round your garden, or whether you can go walk in a forest or somewhere. Getting out into the fresh air, getting yourself out, left, right, keep it nice and slow for a gentle stroll, and then maybe pick up the pace a bit. If you want to go with a friend and have a chat, absolutely fine. If you want to do it on your own, but just getting out and walking, maybe you want to up the pace, a little bit faster, go out for 5 minutes, and then the next day you're going out, right, I'm going to walk for 7 minutes. And, we've all got our mobile phones. We can track a route. We can see how long we're walking, our average speed. And just getting out, getting some exercise, getting into the fresh air. You just never know where that would lead to. I'm not saying doing that will lead everyone to the ultras you're doing, but for mental health, and I think especially with what we've gone through the last year, just get out, small walk in your local park. I think that can make a huge difference for everybody.
When I first got COVID and I think Heather had got it first, and we were put into our self-isolation. I was doing laps at the garden. Even that made me feel good. I think that there's, if you look at it physically and mentally, there's a lot of benefit in just having a 30-minute walk each day. And I'm not one to be preachy about exercise, although I hope it hasn't come across like that. But there's a lot of benefit of just getting out of the house for a bit, isn't it? Even if it's walking to the shop, it's relaxing, it's good for you. And
you never know where it might lead you. If just that walk around your park, you never know. Absolutely brilliant, this conversation. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's been really good. Well, David, I wish you luck with your recovery from COVID.
Yes.
And maybe we'll have to have you back on later in the year after you've completed some of these challenges you've given yourself.
Yeah.
Well, thanks ever so much, David. Thank you.
Cheers.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.